Gina wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked at her ship. The old cargo hauler was making strange noises again. She had landed on Station Vela 3 hours ago, and the mechanics told her it would take at least 2 days to fix everything. 2 days of waiting in this cold metal station far away from Earth. She was tired, very tired. The last job had taken her through 4 different systems without a proper break. She had eaten nothing but nutrition bars and freeze-dried packets for 3 weeks. Her stomach hurt just thinking about another tasteless meal. Gina walked back to her ship and climbed inside. The small living area was messy, but it was home. She opened her storage cabinet and smiled. There in the back was her special box. The box she only opened when she really needed it. Inside were things from Earth, real things. Dried vegetables, spices, a small bag of rice, some dried fish, and best of all, a jar of kimchi her mother had made. She had been saving these for a special moment. But right now she needed this. She needed to remember what real food tasted like. Gina pulled out her small cooking pot and started to work. She filled it with water from her ship's tank and turned on the heating plate. While the water heated up, she took out the kimchi, some dried vegetables, and a little bit of the dried fish. She also found half a package of instant noodles she had forgotten about. The water started to bubble. Gina added everything to the pot. The kimchi went in first, and immediately the smell hit her. That sour, spicy, wonderful smell of home. She closed her eyes for a moment. It smelled like her mother's kitchen. It smelled like Earth. She added the vegetables and the fish. She broke up the noodles and dropped them in. She stirred everything together and watched as the soup turned red from the kimchi. Steam rose up from the pot, carrying the smell through her small ship. Gina didn't notice that her ship's door was still open. She didn't notice that the smell was drifting out into the docking bay. She was too busy cooking, too busy remembering home. Outside in the docking bay, 3 small figures were walking past. They were Velcran cubs, young ones. Their names were Haru, Minho, and Suji. They were small and covered in soft fur. Haru was gray, Minho was brown, and Suji was a mix of both colors. They had large ears that stood up on their heads and long tails that swished behind them. The 3 cubs were looking for food. They did this every day. Most days they found scraps near the food stations, or someone would give them a little bit of nutrition paste. The paste tasted like nothing, but it filled their stomachs. Haru stopped walking. His ears twitched. He smelled something. Something he had never smelled before. "What is that?" Minho asked. His nose was twitching too. Suji sniffed the air. Her eyes went wide. "I don't know, but it smells good." They followed the smell. It led them to a small cargo ship. The door was open and the smell was coming from inside. The cubs looked at each other. They were nervous. Most beings on the station didn't like them. Most beings shooed them away or yelled at them. But that smell, that wonderful smell, Haru took a step forward. Then another. Minho and Suji followed close behind him. They climbed up the ramp slowly, quietly. They peeked inside the ship. There was a human inside. She was stirring something in a pot. The smell was coming from that pot. The cubs had seen humans before, but they had never talked to one. Humans were rare out here, far from their home world. Gina turned around and jumped. 3 small aliens were standing in her doorway, staring at her. No, they weren't staring at her. They were staring at her pot of food. The cubs looked thin. Their fur was a bit dirty and their eyes looked hungry. Very hungry. Each one was holding a small metal bowl, the kind the station gave out for rations. Gina looked at them. They looked at her. Nobody moved for a moment. Then Suji's stomach made a loud growling noise. The little cub looked embarrassed and tried to hide behind Haru. Gina felt something in her chest. These were children. Hungry children? She looked at her pot of stew. She had made enough for herself, maybe a little extra. She looked back at the cubs. They were still standing there. Not coming closer. Not running away. Just standing there with their empty bowls, hoping. Gina made a decision. She turned off the heating plate and picked up the pot. She walked over to the cubs. They backed up a little, nervous. But they didn't run. "It's okay," Gina said softly. She didn't know if they understood her words, but she hoped they understood her tone. "Are you hungry?" Haru held out his bowl with shaking hands. His ears were flat against his head like he was scared but too hungry to care. Gina smiled. She took a ladle and scooped some of the hot stew into his bowl. The cub's eyes went even wider. She filled Minho's bowl next, then Suji's. The 3 cubs looked at their bowls. Steam rose from the red soup. They could see pieces of vegetables and noodles. They had never seen food like this before. Haru took a careful sip. Then his eyes opened wide. He made a small chirping sound and started eating faster. Minho and Suji tried their food too. Soon all 3 cubs were eating as fast as they could, making happy sounds. Gina watched them. She had planned to eat all that food herself. Now her pot was half empty. But watching these hungry cubs eat, watching them make happy sounds, watching their tails wag back and forth, she didn't mind. She went back to her pot and filled a bowl for herself. There was still enough. She sat down on the ramp of her ship and ate slowly, watching the cubs. They finished their food quickly. Too quickly. They licked their bowls clean, getting every last drop. Then they looked at her again. Their ears were up now, not flat. Their tails were still wagging. "Thank you," Haru said in broken common language. His voice was small and soft. Gina smiled. "You're welcome." The cubs bowed their heads and started to walk away. But they moved slowly, looking back at her ship several times. Looking back at the pot, Gina watched them go. She finished her own food and cleaned her pot. She closed her ship's door and sat down on her small bed. But she couldn't stop thinking about those cubs. About their thin bodies and hungry eyes. About how happy they looked when they ate real food. She looked at her special box. At the ingredients inside. She had been saving them. But for what? For another lonely meal by herself? Gina lay down and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would talk to the mechanics. Tomorrow she would ask about those cubs. Tomorrow she thought she might cook again. 6 months passed like a beautiful dream. Gina sold her cargo ship and used the money to transform the feeding station into something truly special. She bought better cooking equipment. She hired 2 assistants. She expanded the space to fit more tables. She even created a small teaching kitchen where cooking classes could happen while the main kitchen operated. The feeding station now served over 200 meals a day. Breakfast and dinner for anyone who came. And people did come. Cubs, of course, but also families, elderly people living alone, workers who couldn't afford expensive meals, even some wealthy people who just wanted to eat real, honest food. Taeyang had become Gina's right hand. He was 17 cycles old now, almost an adult by Velcran standards. He ran the morning cooking shift while Gina handled evenings. He had learned so much that he was creating his own recipes, combining human cooking techniques with Velcran traditions. Haru, Minho, and Suji were different cubs than they had been 6 months ago. They had grown taller and healthier. Their fur was shiny and thick. But more than that, they had confidence. They helped teach the younger cubs. They kept order during mealtimes. They had become leaders. One morning, Gina was preparing vegetables when Yuna came to visit. The station administrator looked excited about something. "I have news," Yuna said. "Good news. The regional station council heard about what you're doing here. They want to visit. They want to see if they can create similar programs on other stations." Gina stopped chopping. "Other stations?" "Yes," Yuna said. "There are orphans and hungry families everywhere. If we can show them how this works, how much it helps, maybe they'll start feeding stations too." Gina felt overwhelmed. She had only wanted to feed 3 hungry cubs. Now she might help hungry people across multiple stations. "When are they coming?" Gina asked. "Next week," Yuna said. "We need to make a good impression." The next week was very busy. Gina and her team cleaned everything until it sparkled. They organized their storage areas. They prepared their best recipes. They practiced serving food smoothly and efficiently. The council members arrived on schedule. There were 5 of them, representing different stations in the region. They were all different species, all wearing official uniforms. They looked serious and important. Yuna gave them a tour of the feeding station. She explained how it worked, how Gina started with almost nothing, how the community came together, how cubs who were starving were now healthy and happy. But Gina could see the council members were not convinced. They asked questions about costs, about sustainability, about whether this was really necessary when nutrition paste existed. "Let me show you something," Gina said. She called over Haru. "Haru, tell them what your life was like before the feeding station." Haru stood up straight. He wasn't shy anymore. "Before Gina came, I ate nutrition paste every day. Just paste, nothing else. I was always hungry, always tired, always cold. My brothers and I lived in an old storage room. We didn't go to school because we spent all day trying to find food. And now? One council member asked. Now I go to school, Haru said. I have energy to learn. I'm not always thinking about being hungry. And I help at the feeding station. I help cook food for other cubs like me. I have a purpose. Another council member, a Quillix named Soo-hyun, looked at the cubs eating lunch. But surely this is expensive. Where does the money come from? Yuna stepped forward. Actually, it costs less than you'd think. Gina uses cheap ingredients. She teaches people to cook so she doesn't need many paid workers. And families who can afford it pay a small fee. That helps cover costs for the cubs who can't pay. But what about nutrition paste? Another member asked. It's cheaper. It has everything a body needs, Taeyang spoke up. He wasn't supposed to, but he did anyway. Nutrition paste keeps you alive, but it doesn't make you want to live. Food like this, he pointed at the meal he had cooked. It makes you happy. It makes you feel cared for. It makes you feel like you matter. The council members were quiet. They watched the cubs eating. They saw how the cubs smiled, how they talked and laughed with each other, how they helped clean up without being asked. Can we try the food? Soo-hyun asked. Gina smiled. Of course. Please sit down. She served them the meal they had prepared, a simple stew made with local vegetables and beans, fresh bread that Minji had taught them to make, a fruit dessert using cheap, overripe fruit that Gina had learned to cook into something sweet and delicious. The council members ate slowly. Gina watched their faces change. They had come expecting basic plain food. They were tasting something much better. Soo-hyun stopped. This is really good. This is better than what I eat at home. And it's made from cheap ingredients? Another member asked. Yes, Gina said. It's not about expensive ingredients. It's about technique, about care, about cooking with love. After the meal, the council members talked among themselves. Then Soo-hyun stood up. We're convinced, she said. This program works. We want to implement it on our stations. But we need help. Will you help train others to do what you do? Gina looked at Taeyang, at Haru and his siblings, at all the cubs who had learned to cook, at Minji and Bogum and the other community members who had shared their knowledge. I'll help, Gina said. But it's not just me. It's all of us. This is a community effort. You can't just copy what we do. You have to build your own community. You have to find people who care. You have to bring them together through food. Will you come to our stations and show us how? Soo-hyun asked. Yes, Gina said. We'll come. Taeyang and I will come. We'll show you what we know. But remember, the food is just the beginning. What really matters is the community. The caring. The love. Over the next 3 months, Gina and Taeyang traveled to 5 different stations. At each one, they set up a feeding station. They trained local volunteers. They taught cooking techniques. They showed people how to make good food from cheap ingredients. But more importantly, they showed people how to care for each other, how to create community, how to use food as a way to bring people together. Not every station succeeded. Some places didn't have enough volunteers. Some administrators didn't give enough support. But 3 of the 5 stations created thriving feeding programs that helped hundreds of cubs and families. When Gina returned to Station Vela, she felt tired but happy. She had missed home. And this station was home now. The cubs threw a surprise party for her return. They had cooked the meal themselves. Every dish was something she had taught them. The food wasn't perfect, but it was made with love. That made it delicious. Yun, the old Velkran elder, stood up to speak. He was even older now, his fur completely white. But his eyes were bright. 6 months ago, a human came to our station, he said. She was just passing through. She made herself a meal. 3 hungry cubs smelled it and came with their bowls. That simple act of kindness changed everything. He looked at Gina. You could have shooed them away. You could have eaten your meal alone. But you shared. And in sharing, you showed us something we had forgotten. You showed us that food is more than fuel. Food is love. Food is community. Food is how we care for each other. Velkrans have a saying, Yun continued. It's an old saying that most of us forgot. It says a meal shared is a life blessed. We forgot this. We started eating alone. Eating paste. Eating without joy. But you reminded us. You, a human from a faraway planet, reminded us of our own wisdom. Tears ran down Gina's face. She hadn't expected this. She had just wanted to help some hungry cubs. Taeyang stood up. Gina taught me to cook. But she taught me something more important. She taught me that I matter. that I can help others, that I can make a difference. He looked at all the cubs. She taught all of us that. The cubs cheered. They all started talking at once, sharing stories of how the feeding station had changed their lives, how they had learned to cook, how they had made friends, how they weren't hungry anymore, how they were happy. Later that night, after everyone had left, Gina sat alone in the feeding station. She looked around at the tables and chairs, at the cooking equipment, at the walls where cubs had drawn pictures of their favorite meals. She thought about her old life, traveling from system to system, eating alone in her ship, never connecting with anyone. She had thought she was free, but really she had been lonely. Now she had a family, a strange, wonderful family of different species and ages, a family built on shared meals and shared love. There was a sound at the door. Gina looked up and saw a small flixen cub standing there. The cub was holding a bowl. She looked nervous and hungry. "Are you the human who cooks?" the cub asked quietly. Gina smiled. "Yes, are you hungry?" The cub nodded. "Come in," Gina said. "Let me make you something good." As she started to cook, warming up some leftover stew, Gina realized something. This would never end. There would always be hungry cubs. There would always be people who needed help. And as long as there were hungry people, she would cook for them. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to, because food was love, and love was what made life worth living. The small flixen cub ate the stew slowly, savoring every bite. When she finished, she looked up at Gina with big, grateful eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You're welcome," Gina said. "Come back tomorrow. Bring your friends if they're hungry too." The cub smiled and left, hugging her now empty bowl. Gina woke up early the next morning. She had dreamed about those 3 cubs all night. In her dreams, they kept coming back with their empty bowls, looking at her with those big, hungry eyes. She got up and made herself a simple breakfast. Just some dried fruit and water. She needed to save her special ingredients. She didn't know why, but something told her she would need them. After breakfast, Gina went to find the mechanic working on her ship. His name was Do-Yun, and he was from a species called the Threx. He had 4 arms and blue skin, and he was very good at fixing ships. "Do-Yun," Gina said, "can I ask you something?" "Sure," he replied, not looking up from his work. "What do you need?" "Those cubs. The 3 Velcran cubs. Do you know them?" Do-Hyun stopped working. He looked at Gina with a strange expression. "You met them? Did they bother you?" "I can call security." No, Gina said quickly. "They didn't bother me. They looked very hungry." "Where are their parents?" Do-Hyun put down his tools and sighed. "They don't have parents. Not anymore. There are lots of cubs like them on this station. Orphans, runaways, lost children. The station gives them basic rations, but it's not much. Just enough to keep them alive. Just enough to keep them alive," Gina repeated. "What does that mean?" "Nutrition paste," Do-Hyun explained. "It has everything a body needs to survive. Proteins, vitamins, minerals. But it tastes like nothing. It's just gray paste. The station can't afford real food for all the orphans, so they get paste." Gina felt anger rise in her chest. "They're children. They should get real food." Do-Hyun looked sad. "I know, but this is a poor station. We don't have much. Most people here are just trying to survive themselves." Gina went back to her ship thinking hard. She couldn't stop thinking about those cubs eating gray paste every day, never tasting real food, never knowing what a good meal felt like. She opened her special box again. She counted what she had left. Not much. Maybe enough for 3 or 4 more meals. But what if she stretched it? What if she used these ingredients to make a lot of food, not just a little? Gina made a decision. She grabbed her credit chip and left her ship. She walked through the station until she found the market area. It was small and not very clean, but there were stalls selling food. Most of it was expensive. Real vegetables and meat cost a lot out here, so far from farm planets. But Gina found some things she could use. Some cheap roots that looked like potatoes. Some dried grain. Some salt and oil. Basic things, but enough. She spent almost half her credits. It hurt to spend so much, but she kept seeing those cubs in her mind. Back at her ship, Gina started to cook. She made a big pot of soup this time. She used the potatoes and grain, added some of her spices, and made it thick and filling. It wasn't fancy, but it smelled good. Really good. Just like before, the smell drifted out of her ship and into the docking bay. Gina heard small footsteps on her ramp. She turned around and smiled. The 3 cubs were back. Haru, Minho, and Suji. They had their bowls again. "Hello?" Gina said. "Are you hungry?" The cubs nodded. They came inside without being asked this time. They weren't as scared as yesterday. Gina filled their bowls with the hot soup. The cubs sat down right there in her ship and started eating. They made the same happy sounds as before. Their tails wagged so hard they kept hitting the walls. "Is it good?" Gina asked. "Very good," Suji said between bites. Her common language was better than her brother's. Better than paste. "Much better. What's in it?" Minho asked. "Just vegetables and grain," Gina said. "And some spices from my home planet." "Home planet?" Haru looked up. "Where is your home planet?" "Very far away," Gina said. "It's called Earth." The cubs finished their food and looked at her hopefully. Gina laughed and gave them each a little bit more. "There was still plenty left. Why are you so nice?" Suji asked suddenly. "Most people don't give us food like this. Most people don't even look at us." Gina sat down next to them. "Because you're children. Children should be fed. Children should be happy." "We're not children," Haru said, trying to sound tough. "We're almost grown." Gina smiled. "How old are you?" "I'm 10 cycles," Haru said. Minho is 9 and Suji is 8. Gina didn't know how Velcran ages worked, but they looked young. Too young to be alone. Too young to be hungry. The cubs finished eating and stood up to leave. But before they reached the door, Gina heard more footsteps on the ramp. Lots of footsteps. She looked outside and her mouth fell open. There were at least 12 cubs standing outside her ship. Different species, different colors, different sizes. But all of them were thin. All of them were holding bowls. "What?" Gina started. "Sorry," Suji said, looking embarrassed. "We told some of our friends about the good food. We didn't think they would all come." Gina looked at the cubs. They were all staring at her with big eyes, hoping, waiting. She looked at her pot. There was still soup left, but not enough for 12 more cubs. Gina took a deep breath. "Okay," she said. "Line up, everyone gets some. But I need to add more water to make it enough." She added water to the pot and stirred it. The soup became thinner, but it still smelled good. One by one, the cubs came forward. Gina filled each bowl, making sure everyone got the same amount. Some cubs were so small they could barely hold their bowls. Some were taller, almost teenagers. There were Velcrans like Haru and his siblings. There were also Flixen cubs with scales, Quillix cubs with feathers, and even a small Draxen cub with tentacles instead of arms. They all sat down in and around her ship, eating quietly. Some of them cried while they ate, real tears running down their faces. Gina realized they probably hadn't tasted real food in a very long time. Maybe never. When everyone finished, they all said thank you, some in common language, some in their own languages that Gina didn't understand. But she understood the meaning. She understood the gratitude in their eyes. After they left, Gina sat down in her empty ship. The pot was empty. Her storage was nearly empty. She had no more ingredients left except for a little bit of rice and her mother's kimchi. But she felt good. Strange but good. She had spent almost all her credits. She had used up her special food. But somehow she felt happier than she had in months. There was a sound at her door. Gina looked up and saw an old Velcran standing there. He was bent with age, his fur gray and white. "Human," he said. "My name is Hyun. I am one of the elders here. I heard what you did, feeding the cubs." "It was just some soup," Gina said. "It was not just soup," Hyun said firmly. "Those cubs, they smiled today. I saw them. They were happy. They talked about your food all afternoon. Some of them said it was the best thing they ever tasted." He paused. "Most of them have never had anything but nutrition paste. They don't know what real food is." Gina felt tears in her eyes. "That's terrible." "Yes," Hyun agreed. "It is, but you change that. Even if just for one day you showed them something better." He bowed his head to her. "Thank you." After Hyun left, Gina lay on her bed and stared at the ceiling. Her ship would be fixed tomorrow. She would leave this station and probably never come back. Those cubs would go back to eating gray paste. But then she thought about their smiles, about their wagging tails, about the way they said thank you. Maybe, Gina thought, she could stay one more day after her ship was fixed. Maybe she could cook one more meal. Just one more. She fell asleep thinking about recipes. Gina woke up to the sound of knocking on her ship's door. She looked at her clock. It was very early in the morning. Who would visit this early? She opened the door and found Haru standing there. He was alone this time and he looked nervous. Sorry to wake you, Haru said quietly. But can I ask you something? Of course, Gina said. Come in. Haru came inside and sat down. He was holding his bowl like always. The other cubs? They want to know if you will cook again today, but I told them you probably used all your food yesterday, so they shouldn't bother you. He looked down at his bowl, but I wanted to say thank you again. For everything. That food. It was the best thing that ever happened to us. Gina felt her heart break a little. The best thing that ever happened to them was one bowl of simple soup. These children had such hard lives. Haru, she said, what if I wanted to cook more? Where could I get cheap food? Real food, not nutrition paste. Haru's ears stood up. Really? You want to cook more? Maybe, Gina said. But I need to know where to buy food that doesn't cost too much. Haru jumped up. I can show you. There's a place in the lower market. The food is not pretty, but it's cheap. Vendors sell vegetables that are old or a little damaged, things they can't sell at full price. Show me, Gina said. Haru led her through the station. They went down several levels to places Gina hadn't seen before. The lower levels were darker and more crowded. People pushed past each other in narrow hallways. The air smelled stale. They reached a market area that was much different from the one Gina had visited before. Here the stalls were old and broken. The vendors looked tired. But Haru was right, the prices were much lower. Gina saw vegetables that were bruised or wrinkled, grain that was old but still good, meat that was close to its expiration date, things that rich people wouldn't buy but things that could still make good food. She started buying a large bag of old potatoes, some wilted greens, dried beans, cheap oil, salt. She spent the rest of her credits, but she got a lot of food, enough to make many meals. This is too much to carry, Gina said, looking at all the bags. I'll help, Haru said. He grabbed 2 bags and together they carried everything back to Gina's ship. But when they got there, they found a problem. Gina's ship was small. Her cooking area was tiny. There was no space to cook large amounts of food. Gina stood outside her ship thinking. She looked around the docking bay. It was a big open space. Most of it was empty. What are you looking at? Haru asked. Space, Gina said. I need more space to cook. And tables for cubs to sit at. She turned to Haru. Do you know where I can find old tables? Things people don't want anymore? Haru's tail started wagging. Yes. There's a storage area where they keep broken furniture. Things they're going to throw away. We can take them. Over the next few hours, Gina and Haru made many trips. They found old tables that were scratched but still usable. They found chairs and benches. They found large pots and pans that restaurants had thrown away. Everything was damaged or old, but Gina could work with it. They set up everything in the empty space near Gina's ship. It looked messy and rough, but it would work. Other cubs started showing up, watching them work. One of them, a teenage Velcron named Taeyang, came forward. What are you doing? Taeyang asked. Making a kitchen, Gina said. A place where cubs can eat real food. Taeyang's eyes went wide. Every day? I don't know about every day, Gina said honestly. But I want to try. Can I help? Taeyang asked. Gina looked at him. He was thin like the others, but he looked strong. And he looked eager to help. Do you know how to cook? Gina asked. No, Taeyang admitted. But I can learn. Okay, Gina said. First lesson. We need to wash all these vegetables. Taeyang helped Gina carry water and wash the food. He was a fast learner. He paid attention to everything Gina did. When she showed him how to cut vegetables, he practiced until he got it right. When she explained about heat and timing, he asked good questions. More cubs came to watch. They sat on the old tables and benches waiting. By evening, there were at least 20 cubs sitting there. Gina cooked a big pot of vegetable stew. She used the potatoes, beans, and greens. She added salt and the last of her spices from Earth. It was simple, but it was real food. Hot and filling. She filled bowls and handed them out. The cubs ate gratefully, making happy sounds. Some of them asked for seconds, and Gina gave them more. She made sure everyone ate until they were full. After the meal, the cubs helped clean up. They washed bowls and wiped tables without being asked. They wanted to help. They wanted this to continue. That night, as Gina was putting things away, she heard footsteps. Heavy footsteps. She turned and saw a tall alien in a station uniform. The uniform meant authority. This was someone important. The alien was a Quillix named Yuna. She had dark feathers and sharp eyes. She looked at Gina's makeshift kitchen with a stern expression. "What is this?" Yuna asked. Gina stood up straight. "I'm cooking food for the cubs." "For the orphans?" "I can see that," Yuna said. "But you can't just set up a kitchen in the docking bay. There are rules. There are regulations, health codes, safety requirements." Gina felt her heart sink. "Are you going to make me stop?" Yuna walked around the tables and chairs. She looked at the cooking pots. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to Gina. "Tomorrow morning, come to my office. We need to talk." Yuna walked away, leaving Gina worried. Had she broken too many rules? Would she be in trouble? Would she have to leave the station? Taeyang, who had been hiding behind a table, came out. "Station Administrator Yuna is very strict," he said. "She follows all the rules." "I was just trying to help," Gina said sadly. "I know," Taeyang said. "We all know. Thank you for trying." That night, Gina couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about what Yuna would say. Would she be kicked off the station? Fined? Arrested? But she also thought about the cubs. About their happy faces when they ate. About how they helped clean up. About how Taeyang wanted to learn to cook. Maybe it was worth it, even if she got in trouble. The next morning, Gina went to Yuna's office. It was on one of the upper levels of the station, in the administration area. Everything here was clean and official. Yuna sat behind a big desk. She looked at Gina with those sharp eyes. "Sit down," Yuna said. Gina sat. She tried to stay calm. "I investigated you," Yuna said. "Checked your records. You're a cargo hauler. Clean record, no crimes. You've been working the trade routes for 5 years." She paused. "So why are you feeding orphans?" Gina thought about her answer. "Because they're hungry. Because they're children. Because someone should care about them." "The station provides nutrition paste," Yuna said. "It meets all dietary requirements." "But it's not real food," Gina said. "Those cubs have never tasted anything good. They don't know what a real meal is." "That's not right," Yuna was quiet. Then she did something Gina didn't expect. She smiled. Just a small smile, but it was there. "You're right," Yuna said softly. "It's not right. I've been trying to improve things for the younglings for years. But I don't have enough resources. The station barely makes enough money to function. We can't afford better food for the orphans." "So what are you going to do?" Gina asked. "Make me stop?" Yuna stood up and walked to her window. She looked out at the station. "No," she said. "I'm going to help you," Gina blinked. "What?" "You've done something I couldn't do," Yuna said. "You've shown these younglings that someone cares. You've given them hope. I can't make you stop that," she turned around. "But we need to do this properly. I can't have an unlicensed kitchen in my docking bay. So I'm going to license it, make it official, give you space in one of the empty storage areas, help you get the supplies you need." Gina couldn't believe what she was hearing. "Really? You'll help?" "Really," Yuna said. "But I have conditions. You need to follow health codes. You need to keep the area clean. And you need to train others to help you. You can't do this alone." "I can do all that," Gina said quickly. "Taeyang already wants to learn. I'm sure others will too." "Good," Yuna said. She held out her hand. "Welcome to the feeding station program, Gina." Gina shook her hand, smiling so wide her face hurt. She had come to this station for ship repairs. Now she was starting something much bigger, something important, something that might change lives. The storage area Yuna gave Gina was perfect. It was large and empty with high ceilings and good lighting. It had running water and power connections. Gina could hardly believe her luck. With Yuna's official approval, everything changed. Workers came and helped set up proper cooking stations. They installed large sinks for washing. They brought in sturdy tables and chairs. They even gave Gina some basic cooking equipment from the station's old cafeteria. The cubs helped too. Taeyang worked every day, learning everything Gina taught him. He learned how to cut vegetables properly. He learned about heat control. He learned about seasoning and timing. He was a natural cook. Haru, Minho, and Suji helped organize the other cubs. They made sure everyone washed their hands before meals. They taught the younger cubs to wait their turn. They helped clean up after eating. Within a week, the feeding station was running smoothly. Gina cooked large meals twice a day. She used cheap ingredients but made them taste good with proper cooking techniques. Simple vegetable soups, bean stews, rice with mixed vegetables, grain porridge with dried fruit. Nothing fancy, but everything was hot, filling, and most importantly, it tasted good. Word spread through the lower levels of the station. More cubs started coming. Not just orphans, but any young ones whose families were too poor to afford good food. Soon, Gina was feeding 50 cubs at each meal. The cubs started to change. They had more energy. Their fur and feathers and scales looked healthier. They smiled more. They played instead of just sitting around looking tired and sad. But Gina faced a problem. She was running out of ideas. She knew how to cook earth food, but many of the ingredients she needed didn't exist out here. She had to use local foods, and she didn't always know the best way to prepare them. One day, an adult Velcrin came to the feeding station. She was thin and wore old clothes. She stood at the entrance, watching nervously. Gina walked over. "Hello, can I help you?" "My name is Minji," the woman said. "I heard you feed the younglings. My daughter Rena comes here every day. She talks about your food all the time." "That's nice to hear," Gina said. Minji looked uncomfortable. "I wanted to say thank you. But also, I noticed you're using fire root in your soup today." "Fire root?" Gina looked at the red vegetable she had bought. "Is that what it's called?" "Yes," Minji said. "But you're cooking it wrong. If you boil fire root too long, it becomes bitter. You need to add it near the end. And if you roast it first, it becomes sweeter." Gina's eyes lit up. "Really, can you show me?" Minji hesitated. "I don't want to interfere." "Please," Gina said. "I want to learn. I want to make the best food possible for these cubs." Minji smiled and came into the kitchen. She showed Gina how to prepare fire root properly. She also taught her about other local vegetables and how to cook them. Gina took notes on everything. "Where did you learn to cook?" Gina asked. "From my mother," Minji said. And she learned from her mother. Velcran cooking has been passed down for generations, but most people don't cook anymore. It's too expensive. Too much work. Easier to just eat nutrition paste or buy prepared food. "That's sad," Gina said. "Yes," Minji agreed. "We've lost something important. Cooking is not just about food. It's about culture, about love, about taking care of each other." That night, Gina thought about what Minji had said. She realized that cooking wasn't just about filling stomachs. It was about something bigger, something more important. The next day, Gina had an idea. She called a meeting with all the older cubs. Taeyang came, of course. So did several others who had been helping in the kitchen. Haru Minho and Suji were there too, even though they were younger. "I want to start teaching cooking classes," Gina announced. "Not just for me to cook for you, but for all of you to learn to cook, so you can cook for yourselves, so you can cook for each other." "But we don't know how," one cub said. "That's why I'll teach you," Gina said. "And I'll bring in others who know about local foods. Like Minji, she knows Velcran cooking. We can learn from each other." Taeyang stood up. "I think this is a good idea. I've learned so much already, and I want to learn more." "Me too," Suji said. "I want to learn to cook like you, Gina." More cubs agreed. They were excited about the idea. The cooking classes started the next week. Gina taught basic skills: how to use a knife safely, how to boil water, how to know when food is cooked properly. The cubs learned quickly. They were eager and paid attention. Minji came several times to teach Velcran recipes. She brought her daughter Rena, who was proud to see her mother teaching. Other adults started coming too. A Quillix elder named Bogum taught the cubs how to prepare grain dishes from his culture. A Flixen parent named Jisoo taught them about seasoning and spices. The feeding station became more than just a place to eat. It became a place to learn, a place where different species shared their food traditions, a place where old recipes were remembered and passed on. One day, something unexpected happened. A well-dressed Threx couple came to the feeding station during mealtime. They stood at the entrance, looking around. They didn't look poor. They didn't look like they needed free food. Gina walked over to them. "Can I help you?" "We heard about this place," the woman said. "Our son told us about it. He comes here sometimes." A young Threx cub ran over and hugged the woman. "Mom, Dad!" "Try the food. It's so good." The couple looked embarrassed. "We're not here to take food from younglings who need it," the man said quickly. "We just wanted to see what our son was talking about." "Everyone is welcome to eat here," Gina said. "If you'd like to try the food, please sit down." The couple sat with their son. Gina brought them bowls of the vegetable stew she had made that day. She watched as they took their first bites. The woman's eyes widened. This is really good. This tastes like real cooking." Like home cooking. How much does this cost? The man asked. It's free, Gina said. This is a community feeding station. Free? The man looked confused. But this is better than the food in the station restaurants. And they charge a lot. That's because restaurants care about profit, Gina said. I just care about feeding people well. The couple finished their meal and came to talk to Gina before they left. This is wonderful what you're doing, the woman said. Our family can afford restaurant food, but it's not very good. And it's expensive. I used to cook at home, but I stopped because I work long hours and I'm always tired. But eating this, it reminded me of why cooking matters. Would you like to learn some recipes? Gina asked. We have cooking classes. The woman's face lit up. Really? I would love that. After that day, more families started coming to the feeding station. Not just poor families, regular families too. Families who could afford to buy food but were tired of expensive, tasteless meals. They came to eat together. They came to learn to cook. They came to be part of the community. Gina started charging a small fee for families who could afford it. Just enough to cover the cost of ingredients. The money helped her buy more food for the cubs who really needed it. Yuna came to visit one evening. She walked around the busy feeding station, watching cubs and families eating together, watching Taeyang teaching a cooking class to younger cubs, watching Minji demonstrating how to make traditional Velcron bread. You've done something amazing here, Yuna said to Gina. I gave you space for a feeding station. You've created a community center. I just wanted to feed hungry cubs, Gina said. It's more than that now, Yuna said. Look around. You've brought people together. Different species. Different economic levels, all sharing food, all learning from each other. This is what community should be. Gina looked around and felt pride swell in her chest. The storage area that had been empty and cold was now full of life. Full of laughter, full of good smells and happy people. But she also felt something else. A pull, a longing. She hadn't thought about leaving the station in weeks. Her ship had been repaired long ago. She could leave any time. But she hadn't. This place needed her. These cubs needed her. And honestly, she needed them too. That night, Gina made a big decision. She went to the docking bay and looked at her old cargo ship. It had been her home for 5 years. It represented her freedom, her independence, her life of traveling from system to system. But it also represented loneliness. All those meals eaten alone, all those nights with no one to talk to, all those systems visited but never really connecting with anyone. Here at the station, she had connection. She had purpose. She had family. Gina went to Yuna's office the next morning. I want to sell my ship, she said, and use the money to expand the feeding station. Make it better. Help more people. Yuna looked at her seriously. Are you sure? That ship is your livelihood, your way of making money. I'll find other work, Gina said. Maybe I can get hired as a station cook. Or maybe people will pay for my cooking classes. I'll figure it out. But I know I need to stay here. This is where I'm meant to be. Yuna smiled. Then welcome home, Gina.